Hey everybody, I'm here with Plato. Welcome to the show. We're going to be talking about 5 reasons The Rings of Power is Amazon Prime Video's best fantasy show. And 5, it's The Wheel of Time. I read this and I think my brain broke. This is a story by Kaylina Pierce Bowen, and it's one of the worst. I just don't know what to say about it after reading it, but I just had to share it with you guys because there seems to be this weird misconception up at whatever this place is writing from. Screen Rant, not sure who they are. These people don't seem to understand that Rings of Power is one of the most hated TV shows in cinema history. But they provide bullet points anyway, like they're about to make some kind of weird point. And it's just so strange to see the defense of the Rings of Power come at such a time when it's being made clear to audiences that people up in Hollywood don't care about them. And it shows in all of the content that they make. But let's read anyway. Amazon Prime boasts 2 sprawling series, The Rings of Power and The Wheel of Time, each with their own strengths that make the streaming network's best fantasy show. I would feel so sad trying to say this to other people and mean it. Oh, it just must be so exhausting shilling for a show that so many people despise. The Rings of Power focuses on important events during Middle-earth's Second Age that lead up to the Lord of the Rings movies, including the forging of the titular rings, the creation of Sauron's stronghold in Mordor, and the fall of Numenor. The Wheel of Time follows Moraine, an Aes Sedai of the Blue Aja, who embarks on a quest to discover the identity of the Dragon Reborn, a great warrior prophesied to either save the world or cause its destruction. Now imagine being a writer of articles like these, and you have Wheel of Time and the Rings of Power, both shows either having nothing to do with the source material or taking the source material, ripping it up to pieces, and then going a completely different direction than was originally intended. The Wheel of Time Season 2, from what I hear, I have not watched it yet, but I hear it's pretty bad, and people hate it. And they hate it in much the same way that they hate Rings of Power, but in some ways I think The Wheel of Time departed a lot worse. I haven't read all the books, I'm trying to catch up. Sorry, not sorry. And it says both series feature magic, exciting battles, the same directors, as if that matters, and extensive world building based on beloved works of fiction by celebrated authors. It's not the showrunners who are celebrated, it's the authors. And everyone's trying to match the creative vision of the authors, but they fail, and then they blame everybody else when it doesn't work out. Certain things like creative license, budgetary constraints, character development, and narcissism have greatly impacted how they both have been received by fans of J.R.R. Tolkien's Middle-earth setting and Robert Jordan and Brandon Sanderson's Randland from the Wheels of Time books. Both series have strengths and weaknesses that are giving them growing pains ahead of their respective second seasons. By the way, if it's the best Amazon show ever, why does it have growing pains? I mean, this article goes on to explain the pros and cons of each show. I mean, if it's the best show on Amazon, it should have little to no flaws, little to no mistakes, and yet it takes one of the worst shows and pits it against the other worst show and says that they're both the best series. And then they compare the bad things and good things against each show, and then one show is doing one thing better and the other is doing better. It makes 0 sense. The Rings of Power has memorable characters and strong performances. Please. Elrond? He didn't even try. Guy was given very little to work with. I don't even know if he's a good actor or not because I didn't see acting talent in that show. I saw him being really sad and quiet and being slightly amused or smirking a little bit some of the time, but most of the time he was a boring character, had a boring arc, and was belittled by his counterparts. And I suppose from what I recall, and I don't recall much that I enjoyed about the show, but what I did enjoy was the dwarf performance, but there wasn't enough of it, and the dwarven performance that we did see, I got tired of it before we reached the end because Durin is so insufferable by that point. And I wish I would have seen some other dwarves who were more insightful, more engaging, and less into the elf that you're friends with. Such a strange concept, and of course we know why they put it in a show like that, because they're trying to rewrite everything. But sure, you do you, article. It's okay, it gets even better. The Wheel of Time is more faithful to the books. What does that have to do with the 5 reasons that The Rings of Power is the best show on Amazon? I mean, I'm kind of confused reading the title by itself, because it says 5 reasons The Rings of Power is Amazon Prime's Video's best fantasy show, and then in parentheses it says, and 5, it's The Wheel of Time. I don't know, maybe you need to get a new writer. Someone who actually knows what they're doing. The Wheel of Time is more faithful to the books. That's actually not true. I mean, You really can't compare them. It's apples and oranges with the Rings of Power and the Wheel of Time. And I'll tell you why. The Rings of Power is based on appendices, and they're basically filling in the gaps. They're stretching it as far as they can to make up what they think might have happened to create Mordor and all this other stupid stuff. Creation of Mordor, really stupid. And then you have the Wheel of Time, which completely departs from the story from what I understand, okay? I had to watch some comparison videos, and what I read in the books, they've completely transformed who the characters are, changed the priority of importance for characters, ripped some of their destinies away, race swapped certain characters, age swapped, and all of this crazy stuff. No, I'm pretty sure that the Wheel of Time is probably less faithful to the books of Robert Jordan. I can guarantee that. As compared to the Lord of the Rings, which I mean, they didn't really have that much to work with, and they basically tried to copy Peter Jackson. But you know what? To their credit, it wasn't the worst thing in the world, costume-wise and CGI-wise. However, not as inaccurate as the Wheel of Time is. So please, spare me, don't be ridiculous. It says, like the Rings of Power, the Wheel of Time has a lot of source material to work with, but manages to be more faithful to it. No, it just doesn't. The Rings of Power has a huge budget and looks beautiful. That is true. And that's about all it has going for it. Now, it doesn't look beautiful all the time. Like, the depth and the color sometimes is beautiful, but the costuming still sucks a lot of the time. Not all the time. They get the armor so wrong, though. And some of the outfits are questionable at best. But, you know, some of them work, okay? I'm not going to say what, but some of them work. Not enough for me to care, though. The Wheel of Time has a better story. I don't know. I mean, I'd say they're pretty much even at this point. The Rings of Power has as much of a story as the Wheel of Time does in Amazon's series, not the books. It's as surface level as you might expect if you're comparing it to the Rings of Power. Then the Rings of Power has more creative freedom. No, dude, this article is almost like the complete opposite of reality. The Rings of Power does not have more creative freedom. I don't even know what they're going to say. What are they saying here? While diehard Tolkien fans will find a series based on appendices jarring, The Rings of Power does have a certain amount of creative freedom. The series builds a foundation for prominent events in the Lord of the Rings trilogy, and aside from having to compress its time period by having certain characters alive who would have, whatever. The truth is, they had the rights to the appendices, and they just filled in the gaps. And all they did was just stretch it out so far, and add all these meaningless characters, locations, and time periods, and time jumps, that it's almost impossible to formulate if there is even a story or if there is even any creativity going on. There's no creative freedom. They're very limited. They only have the rights to certain words in certain situations, right? Probably even less. I don't even know. But it's not that much. This is just silly. And the Wheel of Time has better pacing. I actually do think that's true. I've seen the season 1. I haven't seen season 2 yet, but yeah, definitely better pacing. I don't know what the other nonsense is about, though. The Rings of Power has better visual effects. That is also true. I mean, I'd have to say that the visual effects for the Wheel of Time is, I mean, you could probably find it in an ABC show or a very low-budget Netflix show. I mean, it's nothing to chat about. The Rings of Power definitely has better CGI, but some of it, like the warg in the Rings of Power, oh boy, oh mama, it's not good. The Wheel of Time has better villains. Yes, it really does. The villains are much better. They're scarier. I mean, they're not accurate. Nothing's accurate. But the villains are much scarier. They actually have goals. They have motivations. They also have personalities. I mean, of course, they are inaccurate, but they do have much more going on than the Rings of Power, which are just 3 nameless priests that you just don't care about. And they're gone in a single episode, and then some orcs that you're supposed to feel sorry for, Uruks, okay, with Adar leading them, and it's just this dumb situation. The Rings of Power has better battles. I'm actually going to have to disagree here. Yeah, no, the Wheel of Time does have better battles, in my opinion. I mean, if you're trying to compare it to episode 6 of Rings of Power, I mean, maybe even, but I felt that the violence was definitely dialed up to 11 in some parts in the Wheel of Time. I'm just going to say that the combat is better, and I think that's because the show flows better than the Rings of Power, if I'm to give it any credit. The Wheel of Time has better dialogue. Honestly, I mean, it's really unfair to compare to Rings of Power because Rings of Power dialogue is such trash. It's just like trying to be fantasy, and it comes off very CW. But the Wheel of Time is, I mean, maybe it has a little bit better dialogue flow, but most of it is very drama fueled. It's all about the melodrama and just like, I love you, but you don't love me like you love him, and all this stupid stuff. So I don't know. I think that they're both bad equally, really. I think the dialogue is just awful. The media really needs to stop defending the Rings of Power. Just come out and tell the truth. Season 2 is looming, and we're all prepared for it, and we're ready for an even bigger disaster than the first season, so I think the media better get ready too. Whose side are you going to be on, man? That's all I have to ask. And I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Like and share with your friends if you haven't had a chance. That would be awesome. And hey, if you're feeling ultra spicy, consider subscribing so that you're always up to date on what I've got going on. I look forward to seeing you all again next time. Later! Meow, meow.